And welcome back. And we have Mr. Starling on the line. How are you today?
Hey, good afternoon. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. And hopefully staying dry.
Yes, I sure am.
So for the listening audience who may not know you, I know that we usually have another columnist in here, but he don't want to come in today. So so you could introduce yourself a little bit for the listening audience.
Sure. I'm Jonathan Starling. I'm a Gemini. It was just my birthday. 6'2". What do you want to know?
I would say probably more so along the lines of your columns recently, because we've been touching on especially the climate aspect, because that's very pertinent right now.
Yes. So yeah, I write articles for the Royal Gazette opinion pieces. I don't write them as much as I would like. I actually enjoy writing them, and I try to touch on issues that I feel need attention, but are maybe being lost in the mix. So yeah, that's about it. I write from a socialist position. Yeah, I have to apologize. I'm a very nervous public speaker, so bear with me.
That's okay. I am as well. A lot contrary to popular belief. So yeah,
I understand.
But with that, you've touched on some things that I think are very pertinent, especially if you see what's happening in America right now with the, basically, I guess you call it poison smog or fog. How do you feel that Bermuda has been in preparation for, climate change?
I don't think we've really started, to be honest. We've talked about it a little on a few things. We were part of the Kyoto Protocol monitoring up until around 2015, I think, which was monitoring our greenhouse gas emissions. But I don't feel that we've really taken any steps to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions itself too much. But the more worrying thing to me is what steps are we taking to prepare for the consequences of climate change going forward. Probably one of the biggest threats to us is going to be sea level rise. And that's going to affect a lot of our public infrastructure. And you already see how our public infrastructure is struggling as is. And there's not a lot of investment going into repairing and preparing for the challenges that we're going to face, to be honest.
And with that, because we have seen some things come out, I would say probably over the progressive years in regards to climate change. And in your opinion, you don't think that has equated to any actual progress?
No, I mean, there's some nice sounding words, but I'm not hearing anything substantial to really invest in our infrastructure going ahead. I mean, just look at the roads, for example. You saw how we got all these potholes with the heavy downpours that we had just in the last couple of weeks, and of course it's raining again today. With climate change, you're going to see that happen a lot more. Climate change does mean, on average, increase in global temperature, but it also means increases in extreme weather events. So you can have extreme cold and you can have extreme heat. You can have extreme downpours like we've had, and you can have extreme periods of drought. And all of those combined they kind of wreak havoc a lot on our infrastructure, as you can see already. And the state is just going to have to keep investing more and more money into pretty much filling in potholes, Band-Aid solutions. We haven't really invested in building the infrastructure that will be able to handle these extreme weather events going forward. And that's partly down to what I call the fiscal crisis of the state. We have to spend more money than we are bringing in, quite frankly. And even the tax burden right now is disproportionately on the poorer people. Yes, we've made some changes with payroll tax, but in general, unless we introduce a progressive income tax, I don't think we're going to be able to kind of square the circle. But then you come into the question is, if we introduce progressive income tax, is that going to scare away international business? So I feel we're kind of afraid to act in a way.
Well, it's definitely a balancing act, but the progressive income tax, how would you envision that working? As far as like, because I mean, I know how it looks on paper, but I mean from your point of view, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a tax expert. I'll put that on the table there, but we have progressive income tax in many countries throughout the world. I would imagine we can adapt those to the Bermuda context. It's not simply payroll tax because you have inherited wealth and wealth that comes in other forms as well, which is why I would say income tax is more than just your wages per se.
No, okay, understandable. And you touched on something earlier, which is preparing for the climate disasters to come.
Yeah.
That kind of dovetails into what the grassroots has been talking about. I mean, every time I hear it, because in my community they have a lot of gardens and patches and different things that people are growing their food. So it's been a buzz in the grassroots about water security and food security.
Yeah.
How do you think we as a community, or let's say government, doesn't have to be this particular government, but a government can kickstart that for the community?
Yeah, I mean, government can fund more into community gardens. They're already expanding the water system. They're focusing more on the East End at the moment. From what I understand, they're looking to create a interconnected water system for the entire island, starting from the east. That's going to be dealing with wastewater treatment to produce gray water, and also providing piped drinking water throughout the island. That's useful, and that's going to really be helpful going ahead. So we are doing some things. I tend towards pessimism in my view of how little we are doing, but that is certainly a step to do that. I do think that we need to invest more in our individual houses as well. I mean, there's a lot of people who have wells, which can then go into the gray water. And by gray water, I mean water you can't drink. You can use that to, say, flush the toilet or even to water the garden outside. That would reduce a lot of our challenges.
Agreed. Okay. I know that the title was MP Famous titled it Global Social Hurricane. So I guess we could touch on some of the social aspects as far as what you think is probably one of the most serious things on the docket that you've brought up in your past articles, because I know you write on a wide range of topics.
Thank you. I tried.
Let me see. So if it's one thing that you feel is probably one of the most pressing things that you've campaigned for over the years that has been, I guess I could say, ignored, what would it be?
Oh, geez, there's a whole load of things to pick from there. I think I think Bermuda needs to really address our infrastructure, as I've mentioned. We did have a national infrastructure plan in 2012, but there's been no steps on that. I think it would be wise for us to revisit that, and that would allow us to find out what infrastructure needs to be invested in first in terms of funding priorities, and give a better idea of what needs done. I think we really need to shift to kind of a national healthcare system like what you have in the UK. And that's going to be a big problem going up in the next few years. We have a big, what I'm calling a silver tsunami, because we have, I know people don't like the phrase, but we have the boomers. We have the baby boomers who are increasingly retiring, and that's going to be a huge population, seniors, who, we need infrastructure for them so that they can use the buses, walk around the city better. We also need to realize that that's going to cause a massive cost on healthcare going forward, and we're going to have less workers here being able to work. So that is a challenge. I would say infrastructure, healthcare are probably the key things that we need to work on.
Mm-hmm. And what do you feel as in regards to the plans that have been laid out now to increase our working population?
Yeah, I mean, one challenge is I kind of feel international business, as great as it is for Bermuda's economy, does really skew the economy for Bermudians, because we can't really compete with the housing allowances that IB gives to their expat workers, and that makes our rents shoot through the roof. Makes Bermudians increasingly unable to afford rent. So I think we need more rent control, more affordable housing. And I don't mean affordable housing like what we did with Grand Atlantic. To me, that was not affordable housing at all. I don't know what they were thinking with that design. But we need more rent control and affordable housing for sure.
Agreed. And I know that, affordable housing is a word that I think both parties have used. But it seems to be some real challenges there, as far as, actually materializing affordable housing for Bermudians. Mm-hmm. So in that regard, do you have anything that you think government might consider as far as, actually materializing affordable housing here in Bermuda? Because I know and I'm not expecting an in-depth, because I know, but this is just, let's say, a policy point from a high level, not anything too specialized.
Yeah, I would say so. For example, any big housing condominium developments going up, like even the ones that are being proposed for Southampton Princess, I would ring fence to make sure that, say, 30% of the houses being built are under rent control and are affordable housing. And by affordable housing, I would say no more than a third of your wage, and by that I mean the minimum wage. Rent should be no more than that, for example. That would be one step, because right now you have a lot of gated communities popping up where you have kind of rich ghettos and poor ghettos. Essentially, by having that mixed housing, you would address that to a degree. I do think that the government should invest in building actual public housing. Now, that could be apartment buildings in the city, for example. It could be on a whole bunch of BLDC land that we have. There's a lot of opportunities for it. It's just a matter of having the political will to do it, and then, of course, having the financial money to pay for it. And that goes back down to the problem about how the state is being funded. We are constantly doing austerity, but we're not really doing much in terms of revenue generation, in terms of actually taxing the wealth that is in Bermuda.
Mm-hmm. And in regards to, your personal journey as a journalist, because whether we agree or disagree, it is difficult to campaign or speak your mind or stand on something in a community so small. You're bound to get pushback or, disagreement, which I think is healthy. But, for some, it can be overwhelming. Do you feel like we're in a place where, it's inviting to engage in political or social discourse, or do you feel that we have deteriorated in that regard?
I wouldn't say we've deteriorated. Having free thinking and free political speech in Bermuda has been a problem going back centuries. It's different now. We have less overt racism and overt oppression going on, but there's still highly partisan views out there. I do think that our two-party system helps encourage that, because it kind of encourages tribalism. So that is a challenge. Social media can be good, but it can also be bad. We've seen how it has been abused within North America with like fake news and so forth, and we're not immune to that. We have that here. What happens in America tends to kick off here as well, although maybe not to the same degree. I do want to clarify, I'm not a journalist. I have a lot of respect for journalists, and I don't want them thinking I'm taking credit for their work. I'm just an opinion writer. I have my views, and I try to write. I'm maybe not the best writer, but I try, and the more you do it, the better you become. I do think you're right. You need to have a very thick skin, especially on a small island, because, everyone knows you type thing. And you don't necessarily know them, but they know you. And being so small, there's always the risk of, being blacklisted from jobs or seeing yourself being personally attacked. I mean, I've sat in restaurants and the table across from me is talking about me. They don't realize that I'm the person right next to them, but it's really curious to hear the fake news or the mythology that they come up with. I'm like, I didn't do that. What are they talking about? So it is kind of strange in a small island in that sense. You do need, as I said, a thick skin, but you also need to have optimism that you can affect change and get people thinking and build support. As much as I know I have a lot of haters out there, I also know that I have a lot of people who come up and stop me in the street and say that they really enjoyed this article. So yeah, it's kind of good and bad.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I think, and I know MP Famous and I, obviously we can relate. You know, you walk up and the auntie sees you in the store and she says, "Why you wrote that foolishness in your paper?" Yeah. And I said, "No." I said, "Auntie, you was on my side just 3 weeks ago." But she said, "Oh, you're writing foolishness right now." You know, but it's good though, in the sense that I feel Bermudians can express themselves to their prospective candidates, outspoken citizens, and elected members, and even the head of state. Elected head of state. My apologies.
Yeah, the premier.
Yeah, without too much of a barrier. Whereas in other countries, you got to go do security and you got to speak to the rep and you got to do all this. So I think in that sense, it can be really good for the electorate, but extremely draining for a person who is, being an advocate. So how
you're always in the public eye. You can cause burnout. I mean, I know sticks and stones may break bones, but words don't hurt. But they do, and they do build up. And you have to have a backbone and a thick skin. But it still can get to you. I mean, you and I have had arguments politically. We've got a bit heated at times as well, right? So.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But I mean, this is why I believe in posting things publicly. Like I never try to operate in a silo. You know what I mean? So I do not, distance, like I would not block or cut off anybody who disagrees, because I only feel like that either makes me reflect on, what I've said, or it makes me sharpen my blade as far as where I stand. So I feel like it's another issue is, silos, and we have to learn to disagree with each other. Even if sometimes you get heated, but I mean, you get over it, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, I don't think I really blocked that many people. I know I've been blocked by people, but I have unfriended some people. If someone who's like my friend on social media is constantly saying outright defamation, like lies about me, or even threatening me with violence, or, I mean, I've had death threats. My self-respect is I'm not going to entertain that person as a friend. I may not block them, but yeah, you have to have that fine balance between respecting other people's opinions and self-respect for yourself to not engage with people who have nothing but vitriol towards you. But yeah, that does lead to the silos, as you say.
And, in that regard, because I do obviously, I don't want anybody to receive, threats or things for their beliefs. If they're not advocating for anything that harms or strips others of rights. But, just if you could give any advice to somebody who is thinking, hey, I want to advocate for something, or I want to stand up and speak about something. What helps you stay in it? What helps you continue to advocate for what you believe in?
You have to have radical hope that even in the darkest of times that you can still make change. You still have a choice, and that you have to stay calm. Don't react to people, because people are going to try to trip you up or trigger you or set an ambush for you. But the real key thing is really, I would say, solidarity. And by that, I mean having friends, having your family with you, being able to talk to someone about your experiences. You don't want to bottle things up with yourself. It's really important to talk. And I made that mistake in the past where I would just bottle up everything. That's just not healthy for the individual. So I would encourage anyone to have the courage of their convictions, have the radical hope to think that they can affect change, and don't be afraid to express how things are, how you are to your friends and loved ones. That's very key to have that support network around you.
Yep, I agree. And one of the things that I always found very interesting was the topic of reform. I guess some call it constitutional reform, others call it government reform. But what is your ideal system that you feel will foster more progress for Bermuda?
Well, I have what I would call a minimalist and a maximalist view. I have what I think would be the ideal state going forward, but then you have to kind of figure out how to get to that state, and you're not going to have it right away. In the short term, like the minimalist view, I would think that there's a potential to hold a constitutional convention in Bermuda to get people talking about what they would like in our constitution. Now, the UK government may say they're going to ignore it, but I still think it's a useful exercise to do it anyway. And if you get the democratic mandate from the people, it's really hard for the UK to reject it at that point. But I really think it could be really useful and exciting to the populace to try to imagine what a better system would be for Bermuda. Myself, I lived some time in Scotland. My parents are Scottish. I did my postgraduate degrees in Scotland. And so I was quite familiar with the Scottish parliamentary system there. And the way they have it, they have a single chamber system. It's unicameral, so they don't have like a Senate. But instead, they rely heavily on a committee. So even before the final vote, it's gone through like months of debate within committees, and the committees are rated for proportional representation to reflect what the actual parliamentary composition is. And that is really to encourage more compromise or stakeholder buy-in to make sure that when it does actually come to the vote, it's got everyone is supportive of it. Of course, you're never going to get everyone to support everything, but at least you can try to engage. But that's how they get away with not having a second chamber. I do not like the idea of the Senate because it's unelected. It's not accountable to anyone. The fact that the governor can just appoint 3 people in, and I mean, what are the criteria for appointing the independent senators? We have no idea. It's whatever the governor feels like. I don't feel that should be the case. Even the senators appointed by the premier and the opposition leader, I don't really feel they can speak freely either. They are beholden to their leader, and they have to follow the party line. So to me, that just isn't right. The senators themselves are not accountable to the people. So if we are going to keep the Senate, then I think it should be elected. The idea of an unelected Senate to me is, I find it disgusting, to be honest. No offense to the existing senators. You guys are doing a good job. I'm just saying it should be an elected and accountable to the people. I also think that the Westminster system that we have, which is kind of the first past the post, I feel that A, fosters tribalism, and B, is undemocratic. I would like to see more of a proportional representation system in our parliament. And I think that would actually help diversify away from the two-party state, because right now it's really hard for a third party or independents to kind of break that stranglehold. It's possible, but it's really, really difficult. It can only happen in exceptional circumstances. So I would definitely want to change the proportional representation system, similar to what the Scottish model has, for example. And the UK can't say that, that doesn't exist, because they have it in the UK itself. So I don't see why the UK would be opposed to that. One big problem we have in our politics, in my opinion, is the lack of political finance laws. I know the PLP in their, I want to say it was 2017 or the 2020 election platform, did commit to introducing campaign finance laws. I haven't heard anything subsequent from that, so that's something that I think we need to really improve on, because right now, how do I know that the PLP or the OBA or the FDM are not in the pocket of this or that capitalist? I have no idea.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you'll find probably support on I wouldn't say all of us, but both ends would have members that support more stringent finance laws. I definitely know I'm one of them. So
good to know.
So if it's I mean, it's you will find, and I found in this game that it's a lot of us that get involved because we care about people. It's just, I think along the way, sometimes we all venture into paths that we get defined by the public, either by a statement made or a stance taken, and then people just remember you for that one. So
no, I totally understand.
Yeah, it's like you're a multifaceted representative, right? But sometimes your constituents want you go one way, and you gotta always side with the people that support you, even when the outside is looking like, hey, you know what I mean? What are you doing? And obviously, it's your job to look out for them as well. But it's a balance that you have to walk, and a lot of times, not all the time, are you going to make the right decision. But in that regard,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say that I think a lot of people don't understand the commitment that is involved to be active in politics. Because you have to be active, you have to be in the room, you have to be able to have a voice. Otherwise, the decisions are made for you instead of with you. And that you're sacrificing evenings, you're sacrificing weekends to do that. And I don't think people understand the commitment that both sides have to put into this. And ideally, I would like to see everyone involved in politics. But again, we have to make our life-work balance work so that can happen. Sorry, I interrupted you, man.
No, that's okay. And we're coming to the end now, so I want to hand the mic over to you. And if it's one last thing you want to, impart to the listening audience before we wrap up, I will leave that to you.
There's a lot of issues, to talk about. I probably can't say it all. How much time do I have? 30 minutes?
Well, we give you about a minute. No.
Okay. I will just say that, okay. So a lot of time people don't critically think about the world they're in. They just accept things as they are. And change can be scary, but I would encourage people to try to look at everything that currently exists with fresh eyes and to, critique it. Some of it makes sense. Some of it we should keep. Other things, maybe they don't make sense. Maybe we're just doing it because we've always done it. And so I think it's important to have diverse voices out there who will challenge people with new ideas and get them to think. And they might be like, oh, I never thought about that. And so I just really want to encourage your listeners to have the courage of their convictions, to critically examine everything, stand for what they believe in, and more importantly, have solidarity with their fellow Bermudians, fellow workers, and throughout the planet. I mean, we're seeing what's happening with the issues of climate change up in Canada, and yet Canada is still pumping billions of dollars into fossil fuel subsidies, despite that causing climate change, which is exacerbating these challenges. And a lot of the finance comes from Bermuda as well. So think global, but act local. There is a lot of stuff that happens in Bermuda that affects the entire world. And we sometimes don't think about that. I try to sum everything up there within a minute. How'd I do?
Very well. And and I know you and Famous are good friends, as he says. And, he would definitely hold a spot. So if you would like to come back, we always offer, people to come back because we know an hour or 30 minutes, because sometimes we give a full hour, other times we have 2 that are booked. It's not enough time. So, feel free to, if you wish to come back and continue anything, just let one of us know.
Sure. I mean, as I said, I have a phobia of public speaking, and the best way to deal with those fears is to try to get better at it. So I'm down for the challenge. If you guys are willing to have me back, I look forward to it.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you taking time out to come on to Motion to Adjourn, and we hope that you enjoyed yourself and that you stay dry.
I did. Thank you. And you did a great job. I really enjoyed being interviewed by you. Thanks.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
Cool. Have a good day.
You as well. Bye. All right, Don.
Good show as always. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And
sure.
As you know, what we coined it now, and I can't stop saying it. Another one in the can.
That's right. Another one in the can, folks.
So everyone who is listening, I hope that you have arrived or are arriving to your destination safely, dry or drying. And as usual, we appreciate your support, and feel free to give us a shout whenever you would like to hear somebody or a topic or anything on the show. We always like to take in as much options as we can. So thank you for your continued support, and we'll look forward to seeing you or hearing you or you hearing us next week.
We'll be here.
And with that, I'm gonna get the gavel. We're adjourned to next Thursday. Thank you so much.